Don't eat that! The scream tore through the smoky haze of the Devil's Den like a gunshot. Every head in the biker clubhouse snapped toward the door. Chrome. Leather. Ink. Silence so sharp you could cut yourself on it. Standing in the doorway was a little black girl, maybe 8 years old, dripping wet from the Portland rain. Her hair hung in tight coils plastered to her face. Her sneakers were held together with duct tape. Her jeans had holes in both knees. But her brown eyes, those eyes burned with a terror so absolute it didn't belong on any child's face. Behind her, a woman with red hair stumbled through the door, grabbing for the girl's shoulder, panic written across every line of her face. The little girl staggered forward, pointing at the plate in front of Jackson Reaper Stone, 42 years old, president of the Hells Angels Oregon chapter, a man so feared that grown men crossed the street when they saw his Harley coming. "Please, sir," the girl gasped, her small hand shaking as she pointed. "Don't eat! Please don't eat!" 15 bikers reached for their weapons, knives, guns, chains. The woman threw herself in front of the child like a human shield. Reaper raised one tattooed hand. Everyone froze. "Why?" His voice was gravel and whiskey. "How does a little girl know what's in my food?" The red-haired woman tightened her grip on the child's shoulders. "Please believe her." Her voice trembled but held firm. "She's telling the truth." The girl's lips quivered. "Because," she whispered, "because I saw him put poison in it." The whole room went electric. Reaper's jaw clenched. His fork stopped 3 inches from his mouth. And then the little girl said one sentence that turned everything Reaper thought he knew about loyalty into ash. "Yesterday, he tried to poison Aunt Scarlett and me too." The red-haired woman, Scarlett, pulled the child closer, her face going white as she confirmed it. "She's telling the truth. We almost died last night." In that moment, the most dangerous man in Portland understood this wasn't just about poison. It was about betrayal. It was about secrets buried 7 years deep. And the key to all of it was standing in front of him, an 8-year-old black girl barefoot and trembling, and a white woman willing to die to protect her. Comment where you're listening from. Subscribe to channel. Let me tell you who this little girl really was. Her name was Maya Washington, 8 years old. Born in North Portland, in a 2-bedroom apartment on Alberta Street, where the walls were so thin you could hear your neighbors' arguments, and the sirens never stopped. Maya's mother, Keisha Washington, had been a single mom working 2 jobs: breakfast shift at a diner on MLK Boulevard, night shift cleaning offices downtown. Maya barely saw her mother except for the 20 minutes between jobs when Keisha would sprint home, make sure Maya had eaten the dinner she'd left in the microwave, kiss her forehead, and disappear again into the night. But here's what nobody knew. Maya was brilliant, not just smart for her age. Brilliant in a way that scared teachers who weren't used to seeing a little black girl from the projects correcting their math on the board. By the time she was 6, she was reading at a 10th grade level. By 7, she'd taught herself basic chemistry using library books and YouTube videos on the computer at the community center. And she remembered everything. Every face, every detail, every conversation she overheard while adults thought she wasn't paying attention. That gift was about to save lives. Maya's mother died 3 months ago. Breast cancer. Stage 4 by the time they caught it, because Keisha didn't have insurance and kept working through the pain until she collapsed at the diner one morning and never got back up. The funeral was small. Just Maya, Aunt Scarlett, and 3 women from the church Keisha used to attend when she had time. Scarlett Brennan wasn't blood family. She was Keisha's best friend from nursing school, before Keisha had to drop out when she got pregnant with Maya. Scarlett had stayed close, visiting when she could, sending birthday cards with $20 bills tucked inside, calling every Sunday. When Keisha died, Scarlett didn't hesitate. She quit her nursing job at Oregon Health and Science University, packed up her life, and came to get Maya. That was her first mistake. Because 3 days after the funeral, Scarlett's landlord called. Her apartment building was being sold. She had 30 days to vacate. Her savings, already drained helping with Keisha's final hospital bills, wouldn't cover first, last, and deposit on a new place in Portland's insane rental market. They tried shelters. Full. Waiting lists 6 months long. They tried government assistance. Denied. Scarlett made $30 too much last quarter to qualify. They tried everything. 2 months ago, they started sleeping rough. First in Scarlett's beat-up Honda Civic. Then, when that got towed for unpaid parking tickets, under the Burnside Bridge. Then in doorways. Then anywhere that offered shelter from Portland's endless rain. Maya never complained. Not once. She just held Aunt Scarlett's hand and asked quiet questions. Will we have a home again? When can I go back to school? Do you think Mom is watching us? Scarlett didn't have answers. She only had promises she couldn't keep, and a guilt that was eating her alive. What happened next would change everything. Reaper didn't take his eyes off the 2 females standing in his clubhouse. 25 years in the Hells Angels had taught him to read people the way some men read poker hands. He could see lies in eyes that wouldn't meet his. He could see desperation in the way Scarlett's hands shook even as she forced her shoulders straight. He could see trauma in the way Maya positioned herself. Always ready to run, always watching exits, survival instinct hardwired into an 8-year-old body. But he also saw truth. The woman, Scarlett, stood with narrow shoulders held firm like she'd been carrying weight too heavy for too long. Her clothes were worn thin, her shoes were falling apart, dark circles carved deep beneath her green eyes. But the way she positioned herself in front of the child wasn't weakness. It was the stance of someone ready to die fighting. And the girl, Maya, so thin her collarbones pushed sharp beneath wet fabric. But those brown eyes, they burned bright, sharp, far older than 8 years should allow. Those weren't the eyes of a child who'd been protected. Those were the eyes of a child who'd survived when the world turned its back. Reaper stepped toward them. His boots echoed through the silence, choking the clubhouse. 15 bikers stayed frozen, weapons ready, waiting for their president's order. He stopped less than 3 feet from Scarlett. Close enough to see the rain still clinging to her lashes. Close enough to hear Maya's trembling breath. "What's your name?" His voice had lost some of its edge. "Scarlett Brennan. This is Maya, my daughter." The lie came automatically. Protection. If people thought Maya was her daughter, maybe they'd care more. Maybe. "What do you do for work?" "I used to be a nurse." Scarlett hesitated. "Now I don't do anything." Reaper's eyes swept over their torn clothes, Maya's bare feet, the old backpack that held everything they owned in the world. He understood. She didn't need to say more. "Why?" Reaper asked, and this time his voice softened despite himself. "Why would you risk your lives to warn a stranger? You don't know who I am?" Maya stepped out from behind Scarlett before her aunt could answer. The girl looked up at Reaper without fear in her eyes. "Because nobody deserves to die without knowing why." Her voice was small, but every word landed clean. "My mama died, and nobody told me what was happening until it was too late. I don't want that to happen to you." The clubhouse went dead silent. Snake, Reaper's VP, who'd stood at his right hand for 20 years, sucked in a sharp breath. Demon, the enforcer who'd killed 3 men and never blinked, lowered his knife, and Reaper, the man who'd survived prison, gang wars, and betrayals that would have broken lesser men, stood there feeling something tighten in his chest. He looked into Maya's eyes and saw himself. 28 years ago, there'd been a 14-year-old kid watching his father get beaten to death by corrupt cops in a holding cell. Nobody told him why. Nobody explained. Nobody gave a damn. That kid grew up with silent rage, with pain that turned to stone, with a vow to never be weak again. That kid became Jackson Reaper Stone. And now that kid was staring at an 8-year-old black girl who'd lost her mother, lost her home, lost everything, but still had the courage to run into a biker clubhouse to save the life of a dangerous stranger. This is when everything changed. "Your mother," Reaper said slowly. "What kind of person was she?" Maya stayed quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, a smile so heartbreakingly sad on a child's face. "My mama was the strongest person in the world," she said. "She told me no matter how hard life gets, you still gotta do the right thing, because that's the one thing nobody can take away from you." Reaper said nothing. He only stood there, staring at an 8-year-old child who'd just taught him a lesson he'd forgotten somewhere between prison and power. That was his second mistake, because what he didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that Maya's mother hadn't just been a waitress and a cleaning lady. She'd been something else too, something that connected directly to the poison in Reaper's food, to a conspiracy 7 years buried, to a betrayal that would tear the Hell's Angels apart from the inside. But we'll get to that. Reaper drew a deep breath, forcing himself back to the present. Someone had just tried to kill him. The child was the only witness. "Maya," he said, using her name, "you said you saw the man put poison in my food. Describe him." Maya nodded, her brown eyes focusing like she was pulling up a photograph from memory. "He's tall," she began, lifting her hand to measure height. "Tall like you, maybe shorter. Brown hair but gray at the temples. White man. Maybe 50, maybe 60. Reaper listened, face giving nothing away. That description matched half the men in Portland. "Anything else?" Maya closed her eyes for a second. "He has a scar, right here." She pointed to the space between her thumb and index finger on her left hand. "White scar about as long as my finger, like somebody cut him deep." Reaper felt like someone had punched him in the throat. 11 years ago, in a territory dispute with the Mongols down in California, he'd broken a bottle and cut a man's hand defending himself. That man later became one of Reaper's most trusted brothers in the club. That man was Marcus Ghost Coleman. "Anything else?" Reaper's voice was rough now, almost a whisper. Maya nodded. "He was wearing a really nice watch. Black face, silver rim, with a skull on it. I remember because my mama used to show me pictures of watches in magazines and said maybe one day when things got better, she'd buy me something nice." A Harley-Davidson limited edition chronograph. Black face, silver rim, skull at 12 o'clock. Reaper had personally given that watch to Ghost the day he made him Sergeant-at-Arms 12 years ago. That watch should have been buried with Ghost in the cemetery on the east side 7 years ago. Reaper had stood beside the grave. He'd watched the casket lowered into the ground. He'd thrown the first handful of dirt with his own hand. And yet an 8-year-old girl was telling him she'd seen that watch on the wrist of a living man. A man who'd just tried to poison him. Snake stepped forward, his face going pale. "Prez," he whispered, voice shaking. "If it's Ghost, that means—" Reaper lifted a hand for silence. He turned to Scarlet, who still stood tense and ready. "You said he tried to kill you two last night. Tell me exactly what happened." Scarlet took a deep breath, like she was pulling courage from somewhere she didn't know she still had. "We sleep under the steel bridge, near the old warehouse district. Last night around 2 in the morning, a man came. He brought food, said he wanted to help us." She stopped, tightening her hand on Maya's shoulder. At first I thought he was kind. But Maya—" She looked down at her niece with an expression caught between pride and heartbreak. "Maya saw him put something in the food when he thought we weren't watching." Maya took over, her voice strangely calm. "He thought I was asleep, but I was awake. I saw him take out a small bottle, pour it into the takeout box, then stir it in, exactly like he did with your plate tonight." "Then what?" "I pretended to wake up and told Aunt Scarlett I wasn't hungry. She understood. We pretended to eat, then we ran. He chased us, but he couldn't catch us. We ran all night." Reaper ground his teeth, every piece sliding into place. "Why did you come here? How did you know I'd be at the clubhouse tonight?" Scarlett and Maya looked at each other. Maya answered. "This morning when we were hiding in an alley near the docks, I saw him again. He was talking on the phone right next to his motorcycle. He didn't know we were there. I heard what he said." Reaper felt his pulse hammer at his temples. "What did he say?" Maya closed her eyes, recalling every word. "He said, 'Clear the last witness before we handle the kid. Make sure he's at the den tonight. No mistakes.'" The clubhouse dropped into murderous silence. The kid. That's what Ghost used to call Reaper when he was still a teenage prospect running errands for the club. A nickname used with the fondness of a mentor, a big brother, a man Reaper had trusted with his life. Ghost Coleman hadn't died in that warehouse fire 7 years ago. He'd faked his death, and now he was coming back to finish what he'd started. But there was something else, something worse. "Last witness," Reaper repeated slowly. "What does that mean?" Nobody answered. But everyone in that room felt it, the cold dread creeping up their spines. There had been other witnesses, other people who knew whatever Ghost was trying to hide, and they were already dead. Obris and... Snake was the first to break the silence. "Prez, if Ghost is alive, we got a serious problem. He knows everything. Every safe house, every route, every business, every weakness. We need to move now." Demon nodded, arms folded across his chest covered in scars and ink. "And we got a witness problem." He glanced toward Scarlett and Maya, eyes cold as January. "They're civilians. They know too much. In our world, that's a liability we can't afford." Scarlett immediately pulled Maya behind her, body going rigid like a drawn wire, ready to fight even though she knew she had no chance. But before she could say a word, Reaper spoke. "Enough." 2 words, not loud, but carrying the weight of a death sentence. Snake and Demon both froze. Reaper turned to his 2 most trusted men, his dark eyes hard as tempered steel. "These 2 just saved my life. While someone on the inside was trying to poison me, 2 complete strangers who don't know who I am, who owe me nothing, risked their lives to warn me." He stepped toward Scarlett and Maya, placing himself between them and his men, like a fortress wall. "From this moment on, they're under my protection. Club protection. Anyone touches them, that person dies. No exceptions." Snake opened his mouth to argue, but one look from Reaper shut him down. After 20 years following Reaper, Snake knew when his president had made a final decision. Demon said nothing. He just gave a short nod, accepting the order even though his face remained stone. Reaper turned to another biker. "Where's Jimmy? The prospect who was cooking tonight?" The man hurried out. Minutes later he returned, face pale. "Prez, Jimmy's gone. His locker's empty. His bike's gone. Nobody knows where he went." Reaper wasn't surprised. Every piece was sliding into place. Jimmy Ace Rodriguez, the prospect who'd been with the club for 2 years, always eager, always loyal, always asking to prove himself. The only person allowed to handle Reaper's food before it reached the table. Ghost wasn't acting alone. He'd planted someone inside long ago, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Find him!" Reaper ordered, voice cold as ice. "Alive or dead, I need him!" After his men scattered, Reaper turned back to Scarlet and Maya. The red-haired woman still stood tense, but something in her eyes had shifted. Not just fear anymore. Maybe hope, or at least a fragile trust. But it was Maya who held Reaper's attention. The girl stood there, tiny among a room full of dangerous men. But she wasn't shaking anymore. Her brown eyes studied Reaper closely, as if trying to read him, trying to understand who he really was. Reaper did something nobody in that room expected. He went down on one knee, bringing his eyes level with the 8-year-old. Snake nearly choked. In 20 years, he'd never seen Reaper kneel before anyone. "Maya," Reaper said, his voice gentler than it had been in recent memory. "You're very brave. You did something most grown men wouldn't dare do." Maya looked at him, head tilting slightly. "Will you catch the bad man? He's hurt people already. He won't stop." Reaper looked into those clear brown eyes that had seen too much darkness, and he saw intelligence, a knowledge of the world no 8-year-old should carry. "I promise," Reaper said slowly, each word like an oath. "I will find him. I will catch him. And I will make sure he can never hurt you or Scarlet again." Maya watched him for a long time, then nodded. "My mama said good people always keep their promises. I'll wait and see if you're a good person." Reaper didn't answer. He only stood, carrying a promise heavier than any deal he'd ever made with rival clubs or criminal enterprises. This is when he made a choice that would cost everything. The black Harley-Davidson roared through Portland's rainy streets. Behind Reaper, Maya sat holding tight to his leather cut, her small arms wrapped around his waist. Scarlet rode behind Snake on a second bike, her red hair whipping in the wind. Outside, neon lights blinked, and traffic still moved like the world had no idea an assassination had almost happened in a biker clubhouse 30 minutes ago. They pulled up to the Hells Angels compound on the east side, 3 acres of land surrounded by chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Guard dogs patrolling, cameras everywhere. This wasn't a home. This was a fortress. Maya awoke fully when the bikes stopped at the gate. She rubbed her eyes, looked through the fence, and her mouth fell open. "This place is huge," she whispered, brown eyes wide. "It's bigger than my whole apartment building." Scarlet said nothing, only squeezed her niece's hand. She was overwhelmed, too. Not by the size, by the distance between their world, sleeping under bridges, and the world of the man who'd just brought them here. They stepped inside the main clubhouse. The interior was rough. Concrete floors, pool tables, a bar that ran the length of one wall, motorcycle parts scattered in corners, leather couches worn smooth by years of use. But there was heat, lights, safety. Reaper led them upstairs to a room with 2 beds and a window overlooking the compound. Clean clothes had been laid out, the right sizes. Reaper had called ahead. Maya stepped into the room like she was walking on sacred ground. She went to the bed and reached out, her small fingers touching the sheets. "They're soft," she whispered, voice trembling. Then she turned to Scarlet, tears in her eyes. "Aunt Scarlet, it's been so long since I slept in a real bed." Scarlet couldn't answer. She turned away, walked to the window pretending to look outside, but her shoulders shook and Reaper could see she was crying. Crying from relief, crying from shame, crying from the pain of realizing that for 2 months her niece had slept on concrete, on park benches under wet bridges. An 8-year-old should sleep on a soft bed every night, should have stuffed animals, should listen to bedtime stories. Instead, Maya had learned how to survive. Reaper quietly withdrew, leaving them their privacy. He ordered hot food brought up. Half an hour later, when he returned, Maya had eaten and fallen asleep on the bed, her small body curled under a blanket, face peaceful, breathing steady. Scarlett sat beside her, watching her sleep, still holding the child's hand like she was afraid if she let go, she'd lose her forever. Reaper knocked lightly. Scarlett looked up. He stepped in with 2 cups of hot coffee, steam rising. He offered one to Scarlett. She took it with hands that still trembled. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything." Reaper didn't answer. He just nodded and sat in the chair across from her. He looked at Maya, sleeping, then back at Scarlett. "She's everything I have left," Scarlett said like she'd read his thoughts. "I promised Keisha I'd protect her daughter at any cost. Even if I have to die, I won't let anything happen to Maya." Reaper watched her, and for the first time that night, he found himself respecting a woman not for beauty or status, but for the pure strength of love. That was his biggest mistake. Because what he didn't know, what he was about to discover, was that Maya's mother hadn't just been a waitress. She'd been something else. Something that connected directly to Ghost Coleman, to a 7-year-old conspiracy, to a secret so dangerous that people had been killed to keep it buried. And the truth was about to destroy everything Reaper thought he knew. Reaper set his coffee down on the small table, his eyes resting on Scarlett's exhausted face. In the dim light, she looked like someone who'd been through war. He didn't ask, but his silence felt like an invitation, and Scarlett began to speak as if she'd carried these words too long. "I used to be a nurse," she began, keeping her voice low so she wouldn't wake Maya. "Worked at Oregon Health and Science University, oncology ward. 6 years watching people fight cancer, watching them win, watching them lose." She paused, eyes distant. "But you can't get used to death when it knocks on your own door." Reaper said nothing, just listened. "Keisha Washington, Maya's mother, was my best friend from nursing school. She had to drop out when she got pregnant. The father took off. Never met him, never wanted to." Scarlett looked down at Maya sleeping. Keisha raised Maya alone. 2 jobs, no help, no breaks, but she loved that girl more than her own life. "What happened?" Reaper's voice was quiet. 3 months ago, Keisha collapsed at work. By the time they got her to the hospital, the cancer had spread everywhere. Stage 4. The doctors gave her 2 weeks. Scarlett's voice cracked. "She lasted 3, just long enough to make me promise I'd take care of Maya." Reaper heard the shift in Scarlett's voice, memory turning to bitterness. "I quit my job to take care of them. Used all my savings for hospital bills. Then Keisha died. Then my landlord kicked me out. Then the money ran out. Then we were on the street." She looked at Reaper, eyes red but burning. 2 months we survived out there. Maya never complained once. Not about being hungry, not about being cold, not about sleeping on concrete. She just held my hand and said, 'It's okay, Aunt Scarlett. We still have each other.' An 8-year-old child, mother dead, no home, no future, and she was the one keeping me strong." Scarlett's hands shook. That's why when she saw that man poison your food, she didn't hesitate. Because even though we have nothing, she still believes in doing the right thing. Her mother taught her that. Reaper stayed silent for a long time after Scarlett finished. Inside his mind, pieces were beginning to click together. Something was wrong here. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. He pulled out his phone and called Tommy Numbers Park, the club's financial guy and best information digger. Tommy answered after 1 ring. "Yeah, Prez? I need you to look into someone. Keisha Washington. Single mother, worked as a waitress and cleaning lady in Portland. Died 3 months ago. I need everything. Where she worked, who she knew, any connection to Ghost Coleman." Scarlett's head snapped up when she heard Ghost's name. Her eyes went wide with shock and confusion. Tommy worked fast. 45 minutes later, Reaper's phone buzzed with a long text and attachments. He read line by line, and his face darkened like a sky before a storm. When he finished, he looked up at Scarlett with an expression she couldn't read. What he found would change everything. "You said Maya's mother worked 2 jobs," Reaper began slowly. "Do you know where exactly?" Scarlett nodded. "Breakfast shift at Miller's Diner on MLK Boulevard. Night shift cleaning offices downtown. Some big building. She mentioned it, but I don't remember the name." "Cascade Financial Tower," Reaper said, and he saw recognition flicker in Scarlett's eyes. "That's it? Why?" Reaper's jaw tightened. "Cascade Financial is a legitimate investment firm on paper. In reality, floors 12 through 15 are owned by a shell company that's a front for money laundering operations. Those offices have been used by the Hells Angels and other organizations to clean money for the past 15 years. Scarlett felt like someone had punched her in the chest. "What are you saying?" "Keisha Washington cleaned those offices for 7 years. The same 7 years Ghost Coleman was supposedly dead. The same offices where Ghost was secretly running part of his underground operation after he faked his death." Reaper leaned forward. "Cleaning ladies see everything. They're invisible. People talk around them like they're not even there. They have access to trash, to documents, to conversations nobody thinks twice about." Scarlett's hands went cold. "You think Keisha knew something?" "I think Keisha saw something, or heard something. Something that connected to Ghost Coleman. Something dangerous enough that when Ghost decided to come back and execute his larger plan, he needed to clean up loose ends." Reaper's eyes were hard. "People who knew too much. People who might talk." "But Keisha died of cancer," Scarlett protested. "Natural causes." "Did she?" Reaper's voice was quiet. "Or did someone make sure her treatment failed? Make sure she never got well enough to talk?" Scarlett felt sick. That's insane. You're saying someone killed her?" "I'm saying Ghost Coleman is thorough. And I'm saying that you and Maya became targets the moment Keisha died. Because Ghost couldn't be sure what Keisha might have told you, what Maya might have overheard, what evidence might have been left behind." Reaper stood and walked to the window, staring out at the darkness swallowing the compound. "You and Maya weren't random targets. You're the last witnesses on Ghost's list, and he won't stop until you're dead." A small sound from the bed made both Reaper and Scarlett turn. Maya was sitting up, brown eyes wide in the dark, her small face pale. "Aunt Scarlett," Maya said, voice small but clear, "is my mama's death connected to the bad man?" Scarlett felt like a knife had been driven into her heart. She rushed to the bed, pulled Maya into her arms. "Baby, how much did you hear?" Maya didn't answer the question. She looked past Scarlett to Reaper, those old beyond years eyes boring into him. "My mama knew something bad, didn't she? That's why she died. That's why we're in danger." Not questions, statements. An 8-year-old stitching together broken pieces of her life, and the picture was cruel. Reaper stepped closer. He knelt again, one knee on the floor, his eyes level with Maya's. "I don't know everything yet," he said honestly. "But I'm going to find out, and I'm going to make sure nobody hurts you again." Maya looked at him without blinking. "You promise for real? Not like grown-ups promise and then forget?" "I promise for real," Reaper said, "and Jackson Stone never breaks a promise." What happened next will shock you. Morning light cut through the windows of the clubhouse meeting room. Reaper sat at the head of the long table, face cold as stone, dark eyes sweeping across every man present, Snake on his right, Demon on his left, Numbers across from him with a laptop open. And in the corner, Scarlett sat in a single chair, her presence drawing looks, but nobody dared object. Reaper's order had been clear. "Report," Reaper said, voice like ice. Snake cleared his throat, opened a notebook. "Jimmy Ace hasn't been found. We checked his apartment, completely empty. He moved out weeks ago. This was planned. His bank account was drained 2 weeks ago. He didn't run in panic. He was ordered to disappear." Reaper nodded. "Expected?" Demon spoke next, voice low and rough. "4 brothers have been missing since last night. Checked their houses. 2 aren't there. 1 was found unconscious in his truck with a head injury. The 4th, haven't located yet." Numbers continued, fingers moving across the keyboard. "Reviewed security footage from the docks. Unusual activity around 3 in the morning. At least 6 unfamiliar vehicles. No plates. They stayed about 2 hours, then left." Reaper's hands tightened on the chair arms. The docks were where a weapons shipment worth $400,000 was scheduled to arrive tomorrow. Biggest deal of the year, the foundation for expanding territory into Washington. If the shipment had been compromised, the consequences weren't just money. It was humiliation, loss of respect, the collapse of everything he'd built over 15 years. "Does anyone know about the shipment besides the people in this room?" Reaper asked. Snake shook his head. "Just us and the dock crew. About 8 people total. All brothers who've been with the club for years." "Then there's a traitor among those 8, Reaper said. "Or someone's watching us closer than we thought." Scarlett sat quietly, listening to details she didn't fully understand. But when she heard about the docks and the shipment, she suddenly remembered something. She stood. Every eye turned to her. "May I say something?" Her voice shook slightly but held. Reaper nodded. "Speak." "Last night when Maya told you what she heard on the phone, she mentioned phrases I didn't think mattered then. But now that you're talking about the docks and a shipment, I think they're connected." Reaper raised an eyebrow. "What phrases?" Scarlett tried to remember. "Phase 2, and before the shipment arrives. And one more I didn't understand. He said something about the old man's legacy." The room went dead silent. Reaper felt ice water dump over his head. The old man's legacy. That's what Ghost used to call the empire Reaper's father had built. Frank Hammer Stone had founded the Oregon chapter 40 years ago. Built it from nothing into one of the most powerful clubs on the West Coast. When Hammer died, shot in a police raid gone wrong 14 years ago, Reaper inherited everything. The club, the territory, the businesses, the respect. Ghost had always been bitter. Even as Hammer's right hand, he was never seen as the heir, just a loyal soldier, a tool. While Reaper, the kid Ghost had mentored, was chosen to lead, and now every piece was falling into place. Ghost hadn't faked his death just to hide. He'd faked it to prepare. 7 years in the shadows, 7 years planning, 7 years waiting for the perfect moment to return and take everything he believed should have been his. And 14 years ago, when Reaper's father was killed in that police raid, a raid that should never have happened, that felt wrong from the start, that was never properly investigated. The mastermind had been right there all along, hidden in the dark, waiting. Ghost Coleman killed Hammer Stone, and now he was coming back to finish the job and kill Reaper too. That's when Reaper made a decision that would define everything. Reaper rose from the table, face stone cold, but in his eyes burned a fire everyone who knew him recognized as controlled rage. He slipped into his leather cut, checked the gun under his jacket, then ordered Demon and 4 brothers to ready the bikes. They were riding to the docks, to see the situation firsthand. As Reaper walked down the corridor toward the exit, a small voice behind him made him stop. "Mr. Reaper." He turned. Maya stood at the top of the stairs, hair braided neatly, new clothes fitting her small frame. Scarlet stood behind her, hand on the child's shoulder, worry in her eyes. Maya ran down the steps, her small footsteps quick, and stopped in front of Reaper. She looked up, brown eyes meeting his without fear. "Be careful," she said, voice serious like an adult. "That bad man is very dangerous. He's hurt a lot of people already. You have to come home safe." Reaper felt something warm spread through his chest. Something he thought had died long ago. He bent down, set a hand on Maya's head, gently smoothing her hair. "I'll be careful, and I'll come back. I promised, remember?" Maya nodded. Then suddenly she threw her arms around Reaper's neck in a brief hug before turning and running back to Scarlet. She took her aunt's hand, watching Reaper leave with eyes full of worry and trust. The bikes tore through Portland streets toward the industrial docks on the Willamette River. Reaper sat in front, mind threading every piece together. Ghost was alive, planning to seize control, and Scarlet and Maya were still in his crosshairs. The docks appeared ahead, a maze of shipping containers, silent cranes rising like steel skeletons, the sharp smell of salt water mixed with diesel. The Hells Angels warehouse stood at the end of Pier 9, a massive metal building with rolling doors and security that should have been impossible to breach. But when they arrived, the door had been blown open, the electronic lock disabled. Reaper signaled Demon forward. They moved inside, guns drawn. The sight made Demon curse. 4 men, dock workers missing since last night, were bound inside a shipping container, mouths taped, faces bruised and bloody. Reaper ordered them cut loose. When the tape was ripped away, one of them, a brother named Carlos who'd been with the club 10 years, spoke immediately in a hoarse rasp. "They came at 3 a.m, Prez. About 8 men. Heavy weapons. We didn't stand a chance." The leader, Carlos swallowed hard. He had a scar on his left hand, asked about the shipment, the schedule, everything. Reaper ground his teeth. "What did you tell him?" Carlos lowered his head in shame. "Nothing, I swear. But he acted like he already knew. Just wanted confirmation. Then he left us here and said he'd come back after the job was done." Demon was searching the area when he found something under a workbench. "Prez, this." He handed Reaper a small slip of paper. A receipt from Harbor View Motel, room 218, dated yesterday, and beside it, a burner phone. Reaper turned the phone on, checked the messages. 2 texts. First, "Meet at the old place, 3 a.m. Second made Reaper's blood boil. Confirmed secondary targets, black female child and redhead woman. Eliminate both. He was still hunting them. Ghost was still hunting Scarlet and Maya. And the phone, the receipt, everything had been left in the open intentionally. Not a mistake, an invitation, a trap set by a man who wanted to be found. Here's what they didn't want you to know. While Reaper was at the docks, the compound fell into strange quiet. Scarlet sat on the couch in the main room, holding a cup of tea gone cold, staring out the window as afternoon sun faded. Maya sat beside her, knees drawn up, head resting on Scarlet's shoulder, brown eyes following birds across the sky. "Aunt Scarlet," Maya said suddenly, "is Mr. Reaper a good man or a bad man?" Scarlet flinched. She looked down at her niece, searching for words. "Why do you ask, baby?" Maya stayed quiet for a moment, eyes distant. "Because he has power like the bad man. He has money. He has people who do what he says. He's dangerous." She paused. "But he looks at you different than how bad people look at good people." Scarlet's heart jumped. "What do you mean?" Maya lifted her face, clear brown eyes meeting Scarlet's. "The bad man looked at us like we were nothing, like we were trash he wanted to throw away." She paused again, searching for words. "But Mr. Reaper looks at you like you're important, like he's afraid you might disappear if he looks away." Scarlett couldn't speak. She only pulled Maya into her arms, hiding her face that had gone hot. She didn't know an 8-year-old could see so clearly. Night came. Deep night. Scarlett put Maya to bed, but couldn't sleep herself. She sat in the main room and waited, even though she didn't want to admit what or who she was waiting for. At 2 a.m, an engine roared up outside. Scarlett stood, heart racing, and stepped into the hall just as Reaper walked in. He looked exhausted. His leather cut was torn. A long scratch on his forehead bled. "You're hurt," Scarlett cried. The nurse in her rose instantly. She rushed to him before he could speak. "Just a scratch," Reaper said calmly. "Nothing serious." "Let me see." Scarlett didn't wait for permission. She pulled him into the room, pushed him into a chair, went to get the first aid kit. When she returned, Reaper was still sitting there, dark eyes tracking every movement she made. Scarlett sat beside him, gently wiped blood from his forehead with an alcohol-soaked pad. Reaper didn't flinch, though she knew it stung. "What happened?" Scarlett asked, as she pressed a bandage onto the cut. "Small problem at the docks," Reaper said. "Doesn't matter. The scratch was my own carelessness." Scarlett didn't believe him, but didn't push. When she finished, her hand brushed his forehead by accident, and Reaper suddenly caught her wrist. Not hard, not threatening, just a gentle hold, like he needed something steady. "My father was shot in front of me," Reaper said suddenly, voice low and far away. "In a police raid. I was 14, standing right there when it happened." Scarlett froze, afraid any movement might make him stop. "He was unarmed," Reaper continued, eyes fixed on nothing. "Surrendering. They shot him anyway. Said he reached for a weapon. Lie, I saw everything." He went quiet, jaw clenched. "From that day, I swore I'd never be weak again. I'd never let anyone I cared about get hurt while I stood there doing nothing. I built all this. Power, money, the club, all of it so I'd never have to stand helpless like that again." Scarlett placed her other hand over Reaper's, squeezing gently. "But you're still in pain," she said softly. "I can see it. Under all that strength and control, you're still carrying that 14-year-old boy's hurt." Reaper didn't answer. But he didn't let go either. This was his third mistake. Because what he didn't know, what was about to be revealed, was that Scarlett was carrying something too. Something her best friend had given her before dying. Something that would blow Ghost Coleman's conspiracy wide open. And the truth was buried in the last place anyone would look. "Someone enters us about fish. Almost." Morning sunlight poured into the main room, bringing rare warmth. Reaper sat at the table, cup of black coffee in hand. But he didn't drink. He hadn't slept. His mind had spun all night with thoughts of Ghost, of Scarlett, of her warm hand in his until he had to let go, because dawn was coming. Maya ran into the room with quick, happy steps, face bright after everything. In her hands was a sheet of paper, drawing paper the brothers had given her at Reaper's request. "Mr. Reaper! Mr. Reaper!" Maya called, running to his side. "I finished my drawing. I want you to see it." Reaper set the coffee down, turned to her with rare curiosity. "What did you draw?" Maya laid the paper on the table, turned it so he could see. Colored pencil drawing. Lines clumsy like a child's, but everything clear and meaningful. A large building, clearly the compound, with motorcycles parked outside and a fence around it. And in front of the building stood 3 people. A tall man in a leather cut with dark hair and a beard. A red-haired woman beside him in jeans and a jacket, smiling. And between the adults, a little black girl holding both their hands, grinning wide. "This is you," Maya said, pointing. "This is Aunt Scarlet, and this is me." Reaper felt something catch in his throat. He picked up the drawing, realized his hand was trembling. A drawing by an 8-year-old child. Simple. Innocent. But it held something this compound had never held in all these years. Hope, family. "Why did you draw the 3 of us?" Reaper asked, voice rough. Maya tilted her head like the question was strange. "Because we're family now. You said it. You said Aunt Scarlet and me are part of your family. Family stays together. Family gets drawn together." Reaper couldn't speak. He only stared at the image of himself standing beside Scarlet and Maya, at the smile Maya had drawn on his face. A smile he wasn't sure he could ever actually wear. Scarlet walked into the room at that moment, stopped when she saw what was happening. Reaper holding Maya's drawing, shoulders faintly shaking. "Aunt Scarlet, look," Maya called. "I drew our family." Scarlet came closer, looked at the drawing, felt her eyes burn. She looked up. Her eyes met Reaper's. In his eyes, she saw something she'd never seen before. Not hardness, not calculation. Something fragile, something hungry, hope. Something had changed between them. Scarlet felt it. Reaper felt it. The moment stretched until Reaper's phone rang, piercing the bubble. Reaper glanced at the screen, Snake's name, and answered. "What?" Snake's voice was tight. "Prez, we found Jimmy Ace." "Alive or dead?" "Dead. Shot once in the chest. But before he died, he wrote something on the wall with his own blood." Reaper's grip tightened. "What?" "Harborview Motel, room 218. That night, Reaper went to Harborview Motel. Alone. He knew it could be a trap. He knew Ghost might be waiting. But he went anyway. Some things had to be faced head-on. He left Demon and Brothers outside to cover exits while he walked into the rundown motel. Room 218 was at the end of the second floor. Old wooden door, peeling paint. He put his hand on the knob. Turned. The door opened, unlocked. The room was empty but not quiet. Fresh cigarette smoke lingered. A coffee cup on the table still warm. The bed carried the impression of someone who'd been there. Someone had been here, and left moments ago, or someone was still here. Hidden. Reaper swept the room with his eyes and saw them. On the desk by the window, a stack of papers arranged neatly, waiting for him. He stepped closer, heartbeat quickening. A map of the Portland docks with Pier 9 circled in red. Photos of Reaper, entering the clubhouse, on his bike, standing on the compound balcony. Ghost had been watching him for weeks, maybe months. But what froze Reaper was the file at the bottom. A file on Scarlett Brennan. Photo from her nursing days. Old address, employment history. A file on Keisha Washington. Death certificate. Cancer treatment records. Work history at Cascade Financial Tower. And a file on Maya Washington. School records, medical records, everything. Beside the files, a small note, handwritten black ink. Last witnesses, handle before Phase 3, both females. They were still on the list. Ghost didn't just want Reaper dead. He wanted every trace erased, every witness, anyone who might know anything. "I knew you'd come, kid." The voice came from the dark corner. Reaper spun, gun already in hand, but Ghost was faster. Ghost Coleman stepped from the shadows, gun aimed at Reaper's chest. He was older than Reaper remembered, hair almost fully gray, face lined from living in darkness too long, but his eyes were the same. Cold, ruthless, filled with bitter ambition. "Put the gun down," Ghost said calmly. "You know you're not faster than me. Never were." Reaper didn't lower his gun, but he didn't fire. He needed answers before one of them fell. "Why?" Reaper asked, voice ice. "Why fake your death? Why come back? And why did you kill my father?" Ghost laughed, dry, humorless. "Your father. Great Hammerstone. You want to know why I killed him?" He stepped forward slowly, gun trained on Reaper. "Because he was a fool. Wanted to go legitimate. Wash everything clean. Work with the cops, the government. Abandon everything that made us powerful." Ghost's eyes hardened. "And worse, he wanted to hand everything to you. A kid who'd never earned it. A kid raised soft while I had to kill for every scrap of respect. I spent my whole life building this empire, and Hammer wanted to give it to a son who only knew books and bikes." He stopped, staring at Reaper with pure hatred. "I couldn't let that happen." "So you killed him," Reaper said, voice shaking with rage. "In front of me. Made me watch." Ghost shrugged, without regret. "I wanted you to see. Wanted you to know power has a price. Wanted you to grow up afraid." He smiled. "And you did exactly what I wanted. You became cold, ruthless, strong. You rebuilt the empire bigger than it ever was under Hammer. But now it's time for me to take back what's mine." Everything happened in a heartbeat. Reaper lunged sideways as Ghost pulled the trigger. Bullet sliced through air where Reaper had been standing. Reaper rolled behind the bed, fired back twice. Ghost moved like a shadow, taking cover. Gunfire thundered through the small room. Within seconds, the door exploded open. Demon rushed in, gun raised, 2 brothers behind him, but they weren't the only ones. From the next room, from the hallway, from every direction, Ghost's men poured out. The firefight turned the motel into hell. Gunshots cracked, glass shattered, men screamed, bodies hit the floor. Reaper dropped one man rushing him, rolled to avoid another burst, then saw Demon go down. Bullet through the shoulder, blood spreading. His 2 brothers lay still, eyes wide, dead. Reaper roared with fury, firing wildly, dropping 2 more before his magazine clicked empty. He grabbed a gun from a dead man, kept fighting, but he knew the balance was tipping. Too many of them. In the chaos, Ghost's voice came from somewhere in darkness, calm as if sipping tea. "You want to know what happened to Keisha Washington?" Reaper didn't answer. Too busy dropping another man. "Keisha didn't just clean offices," Ghost continued. "She was smart, observant. She saw documents she shouldn't have seen, heard conversations she shouldn't have heard. She knew about my operations, about the money, about everything I'd hidden for 7 years. So I made sure her cancer treatment failed, made sure she never got well enough to talk." Reaper felt sick. "But before she died," Ghost went on, "she wrote everything down, gave it to someone she trusted, her best friend." Reaper's heart stopped. "Scarlett Brennan has evidence that could destroy me. She might not even know what she's carrying. But Maya might have heard something, seen something. That's why they have to die. Both of them. No witnesses. No loose ends." Reaper had to get out, had to get back, had to protect them. He grabbed Demon, yanked him up despite the blood. "Move!" They charged for the window. Reaper shot out the glass, jumped to the awning, dropped to the ground. Demon followed, face pale from blood loss. They ran for the bikes, got on, tore into the night. Behind them, gunfire still echoed. But Reaper didn't look back. One goal. Home. As the bike turned onto the main road, Reaper's phone buzzed. Text from Snake. "Prez, trouble at the compound. Security breach." Reaper's heart stopped. Ghost wasn't at the motel to face him. He was there to hold him in place, to buy time, for his men to attack the compound. Scarlett, Maya. Reaper slammed the throttle, the bike screaming through the night toward home. He prayed for the first time since he was 14. Prayed he wasn't too late. What Ghost didn't know would cost him everything. Reaper drove like death itself was chasing him, hands locked on the handlebars, eyes welded to the road. Demon sat behind him, one hand pressed to his shoulder wound, face gray, but forcing himself to stay conscious. The compound came into view, and Reaper's heart sank. The front gate blown apart. 2 unfamiliar trucks in the yard. Gunfire echoing from inside. Bodies of 2 gate guards on the ground. Blood pooling under security lights. Reaper didn't stop at the front. He swung around back to a hidden entrance, a tunnel built when Hammer was still alive, leading from the old garage into the basement. He left Demon with the backup gun, then plunged into darkness alone. Inside the compound, Scarlett was living the most terrifying minutes of her life. When the first shots cracked, she'd been in the room with Maya, reading a book before sleep. Survival instinct snapped awake. She grabbed the gun Reaper had left for her, took Maya's hand. Ran. She remembered the safe room Reaper had shown her. Hidden room behind a false wall in the main office. Steel door, electronic lock. She pulled Maya down the hallway, hearing gunfire growing closer. Screams. Glass shattering. They reached the office. Scarlett shoved aside the panel, punched in the code with shaking fingers. Steel door swung open. She pushed Maya inside first, then turned and stood in the doorway. Gun raised, ready to fire at anyone who appeared. "Aunt Scarlett," Maya whispered behind her, voice trembling but not crying. "Are we going to be okay?" Scarlett looked back, saw the girl clutching the drawing she'd made that morning, the one with 3 figures standing together. Even in the most dangerous moment, Maya held that drawing like hope. "We're going to be okay," Scarlett said, forcing steadiness into her voice even though her heart was exploding. "Mr. Reaper will come back. He promised, and he never breaks promises. Blah." Down in the basement, Reaper moved like a ghost. He killed 4 intruders on his way up. Silent, efficient, no hesitation. He knew this compound like his own hand, every corner, every blind spot, every hiding place. By the time he reached the main floor, most attackers were down or pinned in gunfire with surviving brothers. Reaper didn't stop to help. One target, the office, the safe room. He charged up the stairs, dropped 2 men blocking his path, kicked the office door open. Empty. But the panel had been pushed aside. The safe room door shut tight. He stepped up, knocked. "Scarlett, Maya, it's me, Reaper." Inside, Scarlett heard that voice and nearly collapsed with relief. But she didn't lower the gun. Life on the street taught her never trust until you see. "How do I know it's you?" Reaper was silent a beat, then spoke. "You promised Keisha you'd protect Maya. That's the only thing keeping you alive. Maya told me I look at you different than how bad people look at good people, and this morning she drew a family picture with 3 people. Scarlett broke into tears. She entered the code. The steel door opened. She saw Reaper standing there, leather cut torn, face smeared with blood and dirt, but alive and home. She ran to him. Maya ran after her. Reaper did something he'd never done in his life, opened his arms and pulled them both in, held them tight like if he let go they'd vanish, held them like a man who'd been lost in darkness too long and finally found light. Maya lifted her face, brown eyes wet but shining with joy. "Mr. Reaper," she said, voice trembling with hope. "Now we really are a family, right?" Reaper looked down at the child, then at Scarlett crying in his arms. "Yes," he said, voice rough with emotion, "we are." But the truth they buried for 7 years was about to come out, and it would change everything. After the situation was contained, Reaper took Scarlett and Maya to the basement, the safest place in the compound. Demon was brought in, wound dressed, surviving brothers cleaning the scene, counting bodies, checking damage. Ghost Coleman hadn't appeared in the attack. Still out there, waiting. But Reaper knew he couldn't wait anymore. Had to end this before Ghost struck again. While Reaper discussed next plans with Snake, Scarlet sat in the corner holding Maya, who'd fallen asleep from exhaustion. She looked down at her niece's peaceful face. And suddenly Ghost's words from the firefight echoed through her mind. Keisha wrote everything down, gave it to someone she trusted. Scarlet went still. She remembered. Before Keisha died, in the final days when her friend was so weak she could barely speak, Keisha had handed her an envelope, sealed. Keisha said only one sentence: "Don't open it until you truly need it." Scarlet had kept that envelope in the pocket of her old coat, the coat she wore through 2 months on the streets. She'd never opened it, thought it was only a goodbye letter. Her friend's last words. She hadn't had the courage to read it, afraid if she did, she'd fall apart. "Reaper," Scarlet called, voice shaking. "I think I have something you need." Reaper turned, eyes questioning. Scarlet gently laid Maya on the couch, then stood and searched through the few belongings she'd brought. Her old coat at the bottom of the bag. In the inner pocket, the envelope. Creased, but unbroken. She held it out with trembling hands. "Keisha gave this to me before she died. I never opened it. Don't know what's inside." Reaper took the envelope, stared at it, then carefully tore it open. Inside, a small black USB drive and a handwritten letter on white paper. Writing weak and unsteady. The script of someone living her last days. Reaper read the letter out loud so Scarlet could hear. "My dearest Scarlet, when you read these lines, I will no longer be in this world. I'm sorry for hiding so much from you. I didn't want you pulled into this chaos, but now I have no choice. For 7 years, I cleaned offices at Cascade Financial Tower. What I saw there, what I heard, it's all on this USB. I witnessed meetings, recorded conversations when I could, copied documents people left in trash bins thinking cleaning ladies don't read. Money laundering, drug trafficking, murder for hire. All of it run by a man named Ghost Coleman through a biker gang called the Hells Angels. But there's more. I found proof of a 14-year-old murder. A biker named Hammer Stone. The police said he was killed in a raid. But it was an execution. Ordered by Ghost Coleman. Covered up with help from corrupt cops. I don't know what to do with this information. I'm too weak. Too afraid. And I know if Ghost finds out, he'll kill me. He'll kill you. He'll kill Maya. But I believe in you. I believe you'll know what to do. I believe you'll find a way to protect my baby girl. Keep her safe. That's all I ask. Forever yours, Keisha." Reaper set the letter down, hand tightening around the USB, like he was holding the keys to the universe. He plugged it into Number's laptop. When the data files filled the screen, he understood what Keisha Washington had given him. The most valuable gift possible. Proof. Proof of every crime Ghost Coleman committed. Proof of the murder of Hammer Stone. Enough to bury Ghost forever. "This is everything we need," Reaper said, voice cold but eyes burning. "This is everything we need to end it. Have you ever discovered a truth that powerful people buried? Drop your story in the comments." Reaper spent 2 days preparing. He studied every file on the USB, memorized each detail, each number, each name, and most important, he found Ghost Coleman's weakness. Warehouse District, east side of Portland, Warehouse 47, the place where Ghost had faked his death 7 years ago in a perfectly staged fire. Where Ghost stored most of his illegal wealth. The secret command center of the network he built while hiding. And where Reaper would end everything. He sent Ghost a simple message through one of the men they'd captured. "Warehouse 47, midnight. I have what you want, and I know you'll come." Reaper knew Ghost couldn't ignore it. The USB held enough evidence to destroy him completely. Ghost would never rest knowing it was in enemy hands. He would come. He had to. That night, the warehouse district sank into darkness and fog. Warehouse 47 stood like a sleeping beast, rusted steel doors, broken windows, marks of time and abandonment. Reaper arrived an hour early, placed his men in every strategic position, every entrance, every exit, every high point with full view. Snake commanded the rifle team on the roof across the street. Demon, shoulder still bandaged but refusing to stay behind, led the rear breach team, and Reaper stood alone inside the warehouse, waiting. At exactly midnight, an engine sounded in the distance, then died. Footsteps echoed across cracked concrete. Ghost Coleman walked in, alone, as if he feared nothing. Black leather, gray hair slicked back, a smile so confident it turned arrogant. "You came here alone, kid," Ghost said, voice echoing through empty space. "Thought you were smarter than that?" Reaper didn't answer right away, only stood, dark eyes locked on the man who killed his father, who tried to kill him, who threatened the people he loved. "I didn't come to fight, Ghost. I came to end this." Ghost laughed, cold sound rolling through darkness. "End it? What you gonna do? Hand the USB to the cops? I got people in every precinct, every agency. Your evidence will vanish before ink dries on an arrest warrant." "I'm not giving it to the cops," Reaper said, voice ice. "I'm giving it to the press, to the FBI, to every organization you can't buy. And I already sent copies to 20 different addresses with instructions to release them if I don't come home before dawn." The smile vanished from Ghost's mouth. For the first time, worry crossed his eyes. "You wouldn't dare," he snarled. "I already did," Reaper said, "but first I want you to know something." He stepped forward, moonlight cutting through broken window onto his face. "I'm not my father. I don't want to go legitimate or make peace, but I'm not you either. I don't kill for ambition or greed. I have principles. My principle is protecting family." "Family?" Ghost scoffed. "What family? Your father's dead. You got no wife, no kids. You're just a lonely man pretending he's a king." "I have family," Reaper said. And for the first time that night, his voice warmed. "A brave woman who risked her life to save mine, and an 8-year-old girl who taught me that even in darkness, you can still find light. They are my family, and I will protect them at any cost." Ghost stared at Reaper like trying to understand the man in front of him. Then he drew his gun, fast as lightning, aiming at Reaper's chest. But before he could pull the trigger, gunfire erupted from every direction. Reaper's team surged in from all sides, flashlights, shouted commands bouncing through the warehouse. Ghost's men, hidden outside waiting for orders, were wiped out within minutes. The firefight was brutal and short. Reaper had prepared too well. Ghost had underestimated him too much. When the smoke cleared, Ghost Coleman was on his knees on cold concrete, gun kicked away, hands raised in surrender. Blood ran from a wound in his shoulder. But he was alive. Reaper walked up, gun aimed at Ghost's head. He looked down at the man who killed his father, who ruined countless lives, who tried to kill the people Reaper loved. "You won't kill me," Ghost said, trying to keep confidence even in desperation. "You just said you have principles. You're not a cold-blooded killer." Reaper looked at him, eyes steady and unmoved. "Yes," he said slowly. "I have principles. My principle is protecting family." A gunshot cracked through the night. Ghost Coleman fell, eyes wide, staring up at the dark warehouse ceiling, the same place where 7 years earlier he'd pretended to die to begin his plan for power. Now he was truly dead. On this same cold concrete, Reaper stood over the body for a long time, then turned away and walked out of the warehouse without looking back. "You can't threaten anyone anymore," he said to the darkness. Never again. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. 1 year later, the Hells Angels compound was no longer the cold fortress it once was. Maya's laughter echoed through the hallways, small footsteps running each morning. "Aunt Scarlet, Mr. Reaper," ringing out whenever she discovered something new in the wide yard. The heavy chain link had been replaced with wooden fence. Guard dogs retired. The place felt less like a prison, more like a home. Scarlet had returned to nursing, community clinic in North Portland, same neighborhood where she and Maya had wandered homeless. She chose it not for pay or reputation, but because she wanted to help people like she used to be. People without insurance, without homes, without anyone who cared. Reaper offered to build her a private hospital. Scarlet refused, said she didn't need luxury, just needed to do what she loved, beside the people she loved. Maya now attended public school nearby, had friends, teachers who saw her brilliance and encouraged it, a normal life every child deserves. She was no longer the thin child sleeping under bridges. Her cheeks were full now, eyes bright. Smile became the light of the whole compound. That night, the three of them sat around the dinner table, a family dinner, something Reaper hadn't had since Hammer died. Maya talked about her day at school, about a science project where she got first place, about a new friend named Destiny. Scarlet laughed and added stories from the clinic, patients she'd helped. And Reaper, the man once called cold as winter, sat listening with a soft smile he never believed he could wear again. After dinner, Maya ran to get the new picture she'd drawn. This one different from the first. Still the big compound, still 3 people standing in front. But beside the compound, another smaller building with a scribbled line beneath it. "What's this?" Reaper asked. "A shelter," Maya explained, brown eyes lighting up. "For people who don't have homes, like me and Aunt Scarlet before. I think you should build a place like that so other people have somewhere safe when it rains." Reaper said nothing, only bent down, pulled the girl into his arms, thought it was the best idea he'd ever heard. That night after Maya was asleep, Scarlet and Reaper stood by the window looking out at the yard under moonlight. For a long time, they didn't speak, just stood close, feeling each other's warmth. "Do you ever regret it?" Reaper asked. "That night, running into a biker clubhouse." Scarlet smiled, turned toward him. "Never, because that night I found home." Reaper didn't answer with words. He only took her hand, squeezed gently, and the two of them kept looking out into the night. The darkness was no longer frightening, because they had found light in each other. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where the system failed you, where the people who were supposed to protect you, the authorities, the institutions, the ones with power, turned their backs? Where you had to survive on your own because nobody else cared? Have you ever been invisible, ignored, dismissed because of where you came from or what you looked like? Have you ever discovered a truth that powerful people wanted buried? Have you ever had to choose between staying safe and doing what's right? Drop your story in the comments. Not the sanitized version, the real version. Because here's what this story is really about. It's not about bikers or criminals or revenge. It's about a system that lets children sleep on concrete while billionaires hoard wealth. It's about how the most vulnerable among us, a homeless 8-year-old black girl, can have more courage than grown men with power. It's about how family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by who shows up, who protects you, who keeps promises when the world turns its back. Maya didn't save Reaper's life because she wanted something in return. She saved him because her mother taught her that doing the right thing is the one thing nobody can take away from you. Even when you have nothing, even when you're invisible, even when the world has given up on you, You still have your integrity, your courage, your humanity, and sometimes that's enough to change everything. Share this story. Not because it's entertaining, but because it's true. Because somewhere right now, there's a Maya sleeping under a bridge. There's a Scarlet who lost everything trying to do the right thing. There's a Keisha working herself to death with no safety net. And they need to know they're not alone. They need to know that courage matters, that speaking up matters, that fighting back matters. Even when the odds are impossible, even when the powerful want you silent, even when nobody else is listening, your voice matters. Your story matters. You matter. Subscribe to Channel for more stories about people who refused to stay down, who fought systems designed to crush them, who found family in unexpected places, who proved that power isn't about money or position, it's about integrity and courage. Stay just, stay loud, stay free. Comment where you're listening from. And remember, the people who save us are rarely the heroes we expect. Sometimes they're the ones the world forgot. The invisible ones, the powerless ones, the ones with nothing left to lose except their humanity. And that's the one thing they'll never give up.